If you're a founder, community manager, or influencer trying to build a community, you could do a lot worse than studying Notion. The note-taking turned productivity app that we all know and love has experienced insane growth since its launch in 2016. Now, some of this can be put down to an incredible product, another to clever marketing, but I think one of the huge reasons why Notion has grown so heavily is the community that it's built. It's so strong and it's so engaged, and it really just serves as a free marketing channel for Notion. Now, the beauty of community-led growth is that you don't have to rely on paid marketing or SEO or really an incredible product. If you've got a really core engaged community, it's going to amplify absolutely every single other part of your business, from product to sales to marketing. And in this video, we're going to deep dive into how Notion built the community they did. And you're lucky because I've actually got first-hand experience as an ambassador at Notion. So I've had some inside knowledge into what goes on and how the sausage is made. Now, I'm going to leave the timestamps here so you can jump around if you want, but we're going to begin with exploring the ambassadors program. I would say this is probably the core of Notion's community experience. Their 1,000 or so ambassadors that they have worldwide are really the champions of the product. But when we look deeper into the ambassadors program, it's not just a single ambassador persona that they have. And this is the first lesson to take away, actually. When Notion have their ambassadors, they have 3 different types. They have the student, the business champion, and the content creator. And for each of these 3 personas, they have different flows, different onboarding processes, and different expectations of what these ambassadors would achieve. So this is very important to think about when you're setting up your own ambassadors program. Are all your ambassadors looking the same, or do they have different personas? And if so, how do you set up a process flow that is going to make sense for each of these personas? You know, if you're targeting content creators, that is not going to look the same as if you're targeting students who are much more likely to hold face-to-face meetups, compared to business professionals who you're wanting to be complete experts on the product to just train the people in your company. And this is what Notion have done incredibly well, and definitely something for you to think about. So now you've got your customer personas defined, the next thing to think about is the onboarding flow for your ambassador program. Now, without going into too much of the secret sauce of Notion's ambassador program and their onboarding flow, I can say that it was just very, very slick and smooth. As you come in, there's a Slack channel with all the automation set up. Everyone knows exactly what they need to do. And the most important thing was that you had a call with your cohort of ambassadors, because they bring them in every couple of months, and Francisco, who is the Notion community manager. Francisco does an incredible job of getting the ambassadors engaged, talking to them one-to-one and making sure they understand the program and understand how they can contribute to Notion's success and what they're going to get from it. And this is another take-home tip. So many times I see people wanting to build communities and they don't have the people who are community obsessed. You need people like Francisco who are going to actually be there talking to your community, making sure that they're taken care of and fostering that community spirit. The cherry on the cake for the onboarding of the ambassadors program was actually the tote bag and mug and stickers that I received as part of my stash. So every Notion ambassador after a few weeks will get sent this, and it's just a really nice thought. These things don't cost too much. Probably the whole package was less than $5, but they've got to organize shipping it, they've got to organize international shipping, getting the right addresses. So it's not an easy feat to put this together, but really does make you feel far more involved in the brand and like you're part of it than if you're just getting stuff sent to you digitally. So another great tip here, if you can, try and provide one physical experience for your community members. Whether this is just sending them something or organizing a meetup, which we'll talk about later. Really is important to get that community spirit going. So we've gone through the customer persona selection, we've gone through the onboarding. Now let's talk about the program itself. So my main experience there was in the Slack channel and just hanging out there. And the channel that I like to hang in the most was actually the monetization channel. Now, at first, this kind of surprised me. I thought Notion might be wanting people to just organize meetups or create free content. I wasn't really prepared for them to be giving so much assistance as to how you can actually make money from Notion. But it really does make sense when you think about it, because the people who are creating content and making money from Notion then have far much more time and far much more incentive to then create more content and put more back into that Notion community ecosystem. If you think about a creator like Thomas Frank, yeah, he makes hundreds of thousands of dollars from selling Notion templates every month, but he's bringing in so much of an audience. He's really getting the word of Notion out there, and then he's taking those resources to build a bigger team, to create more Notion content. So it's a massively beneficial flywheel for the Notion team. And this is something to definitely bear in mind when you're trying to craft your community. Think about how can you get your community members making money from your product, whether that's through referrals or whether it's through creating content. Notion have a very clear plan. You create content on Notion, you make videos, you get an audience, and then you can sell them templates, you can sell them courses. It's incredibly easy and incredibly straightforward to go through that process, and they make this very easy for you through the monetization channel and offering the support that you need to get started making money on Notion. So before we move on to the next section, here's some key takeaways about what we need to think about when building a really successful ambassador program. So if you want, pause this video, write it down, and we're now going to get stuck into another core pillar of Notion's community success, which is their user-generated content. So Notion is really built from the outset to be something that is user-generated. And what do I mean by this? Well, when you create a page on Notion, you just press one button and it makes that page public. It's basically a website that you can share with anyone. This means that if you're creating a checklist or creating any kind of product, it's far easier to create a Notion page and just make a shareable link than it is to create a Word document, download it as a PDF, save it, upload it somewhere. Just completely eliminates the friction. Another really clever thing they've done is by making the product incredibly modular. So we might not think about this as Notion users, but it's actually quite complicated to have a product that has as much depth as Notion does with relational databases, tags, different views, calendars, but also make it simple enough that I can get someone's template online, pull it into my workspace, and then get value from it. And this is, again, as people who are creating community, something we want to think about. How do we make our product so that it's very easy to share and can bring value from the more people that use it? If you compare this to something like Excel, yeah, you could create a business model on Excel using a template, but if you then wanted to expand on that business model by pulling in someone else's work, it would be very, very difficult because it's not designed to be collaborative, whereas Notion is. The result of this is Notion's template gallery, which now must contain, I would guess there's millions of free Notion templates out there for people to use, and just an incredible way to spread the word of the product. So again, I'll leave the key takeaways here when you're thinking about crafting a product that's going to be community centric. Pause the video, write it down, and we're now going to move on to the face-to-face meetups that Notion organize. So as I mentioned, I was more focused on online creation as part of the ambassador program, but there were face-to-face meetups that happened. And actually, I met a very good friend through the Notion program called Daniel Canosa. He and I both made Notion videos. We both talk every other week on just general business stuff, and actually went out to meet him in Spain a few months ago. And it's kind of incredible that this little community of a note-taking app, which you would never believe is a note-taking app, feels more like a cult, brought us together in such a close way. And this is something that Notion really have cottoned on to, the idea that in this digital world, face-to-face interactions are so important. So if you can find a way in your community to encourage these face-to-face interactions, every few months or more often, it is going to lead to just such a tight-knit community and incredibly important. So some more takeaways here. Pause the video if you want. We're now going to move on to discussion groups and how Notion leveraged online communities to kickstart their community. So when I was first creating content on Notion, I made some videos and I wasn't getting any views. And I was like, okay, how do I, make people aware of the content that I'm putting out here? This is before I was an ambassador. And what I came across was the Notion subreddit. And it really was an incredible place. There were so many people sharing templates and it was so active. But what impressed me the most was how active the staff in Notion were. There was clearly community managers there, people who were full-time workers, and they were interacting with nearly every comment that was being pushed. Now I looked at the Reddit a couple of days ago and that's not happening anymore because the community is just big, it's taking care of itself. But it's an interesting interesting point. When you're trying to cold start a community like this, you do need to direct a lot of your own resources into creating a culture that people will like. And this meme, I think, is just a great example of the Notion culture. It's showing someone complaining about a feature that they don't have in quite a playful way. Offline mode, which has been, requested for so long, and obviously they've gone for the shiny new thing, which is AI. But again, just interesting that you can joke around this. There's these in-jokes around a feature that has not been released for like a year or 2 years now, however long it's been requested for. And they can feel free to do that and make a joke out of it. And the community managers have obviously facilitated that environment where nothing is like too off limits. You can, joke about the product. You can joke about maybe bad decisions that have been made. It's all fun and games. At the end of the day, this is a note-taking app. So hopefully that's been instructive and there's some lessons there if you're a community manager or startup founder or just anyone who's wanting to create a community. And let's go through the 5 key takeaways. So the first one is to segment ambassadors. So as we remember, Notion, they had their 3 segments: students, content creators, and then work professionals, and then create different onboarding flows for each of those user bases. The second one is to invest in community-focused people like Francisco, community managers who are going to be involved in your community day after day, especially important at the start where community members can't, interact and take care of each other. You do need someone on your team really helping out. The third one is with user-generated content. So if you can build a product where users can generate content for you, like Notion did with their templates, then you're onto a massive win because firstly, you've got a huge library of resources that makes your product more powerful, but also you've got a clear path to monetization. People make a lot of money off Notion templates, and why not? It's definitely a great way to get people engaged with the community. The fourth thing that we talked about quickly was about having actual in-person interactions. So we mentioned the stash bag, which is a good in-person interaction, but even more importantly, is trying to facilitate meetups and things like this. If you can do these every few weeks, it's really going to pay huge dividends. And the last thing we talked about was online forums. So making sure that when you start up the forum, you've got your own people in there, committing to it. Maybe you have to pay some moderators, whatever it might be, but trying to get the community experience and culture that you want. So thanks a lot for tuning in. If you enjoyed that, every week we're going to be breaking down a company like Notion that's used community-led growth to grow to the extent that they have. And we're going to be releasing these videos every week on a Monday. So yeah, if you enjoyed this, press subscribe and I'll see you next time.